So the final installment in the Silver Eyes trilogy is where the lore takes a sharp turn into crazy territory and provides us with details on the origins of Circus Baby. Chapter 1. John has recurring dreams of Charlie's death, and we get early hints of clowns in town on the television. John works a construction job for his boss Oliver, who employed him as he knew his cousin and knows that he also walked out on his last job. John works alongside Louise and Sergei, who has a partner named Lucy and a daughter. He also gives more foreshadowing by mentioning a new animatronic site. We get confirmation that 6 months have in fact passed since the events of the Twisted Ones. John now stays in an apartment complex across town from the construction site, and his landlord's name is Delia. He has also kept Fyodor's head. John runs into Jessica in town and learns that Carlton is visiting as it is spring break, which places the story as happening around April. He has also notably been avoiding the new Charlie. Chapter 2. The woman, aka Circus Baby, visits Bob's junkyard. We learn Bob has 2 daughters, aged 5 and 2. Baby is seeking something within the junkyard and notes that there were reports of trouble last night. Bob's fate is unknown after this encounter. However, given Circus Baby's sadistic nature, it is entirely possible that he did not survive the encounter. John is fired for being late for work so often, and later he joins a meeting of the friend group at Clay's house, where we learn Marla is currently a pre-med in Ohio. We learn that Charlie, or the new Charlie, left 6 months ago, so not long after she appeared, and she plans to meet with John at the Italian place they visited in the first book. Chapter 3. A man and the woman, aka Circus Baby, are experimenting and inject a substance into Funtime Freddy. We learn that there is a car dealership near John's apartment, and Fyodor's head begins to create noises. We learn that it has been 3 months since John stopped using a book to catalogue Charlie's history and activity, as he had a theory that Springtrap had in fact raised the lost twin of Charlie as an imposter, which would have been a cool story idea. However, the lore seems to negate it. Clay reveals to John that he is in fact suspicious of the new Charlie. The Italian place is apparently located in St. George, and the theatre that they once visited is now Circus Baby's Pizza. It notably has ball pits and play structures, and one employee named Steve. Chapter 4. Jessica moved to her apartment 6 months ago after Charlie left. Charlie surprises her in the apartment and is very, very creepy. Again, we understand this as actually Circus Baby. It is noted that when Charlie and John visited Henry's grave at the end of the first book, it is only Charlie who actually went to see the physical grave itself. We also learned that a new theatre is located not far from the site of the old one, which is now Circus Baby's. It is also implied that on a map there is a straight line between St. George, John's apartment, and then Clayburke's house. Clay reveals that Charlie's mother left before Henry moved to Hurricane. Henry was reclusive, and Jen was notably there for a year to look after Charlie. Clay also reveals that he salvaged Ella from the rubble of Henry's house, and we also learn that a girl disappeared that day, as in a girl disappeared on this same day in the book. Clay, however, notes that 2 weeks ago a boy named Edgar disappeared, and it was revealed that although he was only 2.5 years old, he was in fact abducted by his father, as most abduction cases are in fact the parents. Upon leaving, John would see Circus Baby in her semi-true form, as Fyodor would also go on to start to make more sense as his noises form the words Shining Star, Silver Reef. Chapter 5. Having recently been attacked by Baby after she had passed John, Clay is now in the hospital, and it is revealed that he has been taking photos of Charlie. A woman named Anna arrives looking for him as he has been helping her to find her lost son Jacob. John and Jessica go to Silver Reef and there meet Aunt Jen. They discover Henry's murder bot is in the closet. Charlie herself is found to be in a chest. Aunt Jen is then murdered by Circus Baby when she arrives. John goes to Clay's house where he finds assorted records of the Freddy's establishments as well as the Ella doll. He discovers illusion discs which appear to make Ella human. He then goes to the library where a middle-aged man librarian who appears to have replaced Harriet from the first book allows him to use the film recorders which show him that the illusion disc in fact has a range, and as it makes photos blurry as part of its illusion in order to fool cameras, it does wear off after a certain distance. One interesting note here is the fact that Baby somehow knew where to find Aunt Jen, which begs the question, how did she know where to find her? Did she follow them to the location? Chapter 7. The woman and the man continue their remnant experiments. The woman claims the results are showing and seems to revere the man. However, he rejects this as he wants what Henry made. Baby would then go and encounter John at his flat and very blatantly begin looking for the real Charlie. She would then later join John for dinner, and John basically reveals that he knows the truth and threatens her under interrogation. Jessica would then later hide in the boot of Circus Baby's car and follow her back to her location, which inevitably ends up in Jessica being captured. Chapter 8. Jessica, while captured, learns the truth about Baby's origins. Baby has Charlie's memory, created, as she says, from a father's disappointment and a daughter's desperation. She wanted to be seen, but often only obsessed over Baby, and so there is also confliction within Circus Baby as she remembers the kill from both the animatronic and the child's perspective. Baby even gets very disturbingly deep philosophically as she notes that kids don't know any better when they're born. You're born with no intelligence, yet you're born with all the feelings and this inability to understand them. When Jessica tries to escape, it is revealed that there is a spring trap, which is actually a fake doll mannequin, which has apparently got an illusion disc on it in order to make it appear as the real spring trap. Which begs the question, how many instances have we seen of characters that are in fact not the actual character? We do, however, get to meet the real Afton, who is mangled and scarred from Springlock incidents. Some of these scars appear to be fresh. This appears to confirm that he did in fact get Springlocked twice, and he does blame Charlie for the more recent ones, but also this implies that there was a second earlier incidents with these Springlocks which we never actually got to see. Afton would also claim that the fake blood found in Freddy's was in fact not his. It is also notable that his body is completely riddled with shrapnel. We also learned that Baby's true name for the spirit within her is Elizabeth. And we also see that in order to disguise herself, Baby utilises large pins which are located across her body, which actually appear to resemble the images we see in the behind the scenes work in Sister Location. We also discover that there is an amalgam of various endoskeletons welded together on a table within this facility. Afton believes that the spirit follows the body as the kids died in the suits and then possessed the suits, so he plans to test this theory by transferring his body piece by piece into animatronics in order to survive beyond death. Chapter 9. Charlie remembers the door and remembers feeling herself being on both sides of it. We also find that notably Ella's illusion disc does not feature the Afton logo. We also learn Jessica kept all of Charlie's stuff after the fake Charlie appeared and left, and Carlton would go to Jessica's apartment to retrieve the spare earpiece from Charlie's experiment, which is intended to make the wearer invisible to animatronics and therefore confuse Baby. Exploring the facility, Jessica would find several missing children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Jacob, the blonde boy who is the son of Anna from earlier, Ron, a young African American boy, Lisa, a young Latina girl, and Alana, a young red-headed girl. Carlton and Marla would eventually head to Baby's after discovering the clowns on TV and making the connection between them and Baby. Chapter 11. Charlie and John would meanwhile head to Silver Reef without telling anyone, and Henry's goodbye letter to Jen would be discovered in the house. The replica could not replace the real Charlie as Henry intended her to. With his grief awakening him to reality, he started the final stage of the Charlie experiment, which was Baby. Having rejected this idea, Afton then took it and created something of his own. So Henry, seeing what Afton had done, sealed his twisted creations away, and then in this note told Jen to destroy the house sometime after all of this has been forgotten, before he ended his own life. We also discover that there are blueprints for Ella's of various sizes, which is a subtle hint again to the multiple incarnations of Charlie that we will discover. This chapter ends with the arrival of Baby. Chapter 12 features Carlton and Marla breaking into Circus Baby's pizzeria. We discover that there are multiple small crawling baby animatronics, potentially Biddy Babs, which inhabit the facility, as well as clowns with metal face plates, which does seem to resemble the description of the Ennard mask, possibly the original animatronic that Ennard was meant to be. Marla also notes that at the age of 5-year-old, there was a hay maze in town, and we are introduced properly to Funtime Freddy, who notably has 2 hands and haunts around inside a mirror maze in the facility. Chapter 13. Mangle arrives within the facility and takes Jacob away. Carlton and Marla soon find Jessica and the children, and later we are shown that Funtime Foxy, while on stage, dismantles itself to become Mangle. So if ever there was any potential hint that Mangle and Funtime Foxy are the same character, this would seem to be it. Funtime Foxy literally becomes Mangle. We also see that the second head appears to be part of Funtime Foxy when they are complete, which seems to back up the idea that the 2 heads that we see in Mangle are literally just the endo head and the mask. There is no second endo head within the structure, because how would it fit into Foxy's body? We also discover that the facility has a hide-and-seek tunnel maze within the walls for children, and what appears to be the gravity vortex ride we see in FNAF 6, which is used to crush Funtime Freddy to stop his pursuit. It is at this point in the book that we also notably are told that in addition to having 2 hands, which Funtime Freddy doesn't usually have, he also has yellow eyes, which is strange considering that he has blue eyes the rest of the time, and the only yellow-eyed sister location animatronic we know of is Yendo. Chapter 14. Baby and Charlie engage in a sort of memory link in order to learn more about Baby's backstory. We learn that Elizabeth was ignored and then hit by Afton as a child. Someone, however, persuaded her to approach her father to try and earn his love, This person is never actually confirmed, but could this be their absent mother that we never hear of? We do learn that Elizabeth would also then go on to try and imitate Baby to gain Afton's love, even going so far as to draw lipstick circles on her cheeks. She was, however, killed, as we learn in Sister Location, after sneaking into Afton's lab. And so we discover that in addition to the confliction of the animatronics programming, as well as Elizabeth's confusion and Henry's grief, we then discover that it is in fact Baby's disposition to be so menacing is due to the fact that Henry literally instilled in it his anger and anguish. We learn that when Charlie died, as a child, Henry cried over her doll 2 months and became delusional. He built Ella as a coping mechanism, and Jen argued with him, saying that his wife and son could still be a part of his life, implying that they are still around and they left due to Henry's insanity. It is also worth noting that this small ragdoll that Henry cried over for 2 months is what is used to create the presence of Charlie within her duplicate robots. And we are confirmed that Charlie's memories cannot always be taken as confirmed evidence in any situation, as we do learn that quite a lot of Charlie's early memories are in fact memories created by Henry using a camera in order to provide her with childhood memories. Afton would also go on to state here that Remnant requires the willing splitting of the soul to divide it in order to place it in objects, which is curious as how he actually manages to convince the children to split their souls in order for him to use them. It is also notable that at the end of this chapter, Afton, in the pursuit of his experiments, would go on to inject this liquid metal spirit infused substance into Carlton's chest. Chapter 15. Elizabeth is angry that Afton does not accept her, even though she now possesses the physical form of Baby. Afton, however, wants to duplicate the process of life-giving that has occurred throughout the series. Baby also confirms that she went to Afton not long after her arrival when Henry's house collapsed. Afton, however, wants Charlie, as Henry somehow managed to corrupt Remnant within an object without actually having to die in the process, something that Afton is currently seeking to do. Carlton, while infused with the Remnant, is able to see Michael, and notably, Michael is not divided like the other spirits, and therefore it can be inferred that it is possible Golden Freddy is not part of the amalgam, which leaves his location at this time up for debate. Michael would go on to note that he has to put the others back together, a recurring theme in this series so far. Now, we see that spirits appear to be less sentient the more they are split, and as a result they do not remember that Afton is in fact bad. We also see that there are 3 boys and 2 girls as part of the drawing that Michael's doing to build the children back together. We have Susie, who is a blonde girl, who notes that he helped her to find her puppy, which is a direct reference to how Afton manages to kill her. Cassidy is a dark-haired girl. Fritz is a small freckled boy. And we get confirmation based on the actions of the Funtime suits and the reactions of the spirits that the spirits themselves are indeed inhabiting the Funtime suits. Afton would attempt to add Jacob to the amalgam as part of his experiment. However, the other robots would eventually enter the room and swarm him after Carlton convinces them of his true identity. The amalgam would also arise and pull Afton into the furnace with it. Michael then saves Carlton's life by giving him a piece of himself. Notably, Afton's death here is not confirmed, and as like with the rest of the series, we see that he appears to be immune in some way to fire, or at least to dying, because nothing of the entire series has ever managed to kill this man. Meanwhile, in Silver Reef, Charlie uses the murder endo as a trap to impale herself and Baby, before sliding the rag doll from herself to Baby. John, upon witnessing this, leaves the house. Chapter 16. Clay says he will keep seeking for Charlie. Carlton asked if he would, and is given a confused look by Clay. This is interesting as it appears that John never truly told anyone what happened at Silver Reef, and so the characters themselves are in the dark as to Charlie's fate, because John notes that they will not find her, but they don't seem to react, so clearly they don't know of what happened. John would then go to where Henry's grave sat, and we discover that Henry's grave sits alongside Charlie's, alone and run down next to a telephone pole. So therefore Charlie's grave is not one of the 6 we see in Pizzeria Simulator. We would also see that Charlie's grave reads 1980 to 1983. So therefore Charlie was born in 1980, and her death, or at least when Henry accepted her death, was in 1983. Now the book ends on a rather ominous and mysterious note, as while standing at the grave, John witnesses a woman next to a tree nearby. It goes to her and then walks away with her. Now, given that throughout this book the phrase "the woman" has only been used to refer to one person, Circus Baby, it is entirely possible, as we know this book predates a lot of the series' events, and therefore we know Baby is not dead from the events that have occurred in this book. It's entirely possible that Baby survived Charlie's murder attempt and therefore has now showed up at this location. John, seeing her as no longer truly being Charlie, sees her as the woman to distance her from their identity, and he walks away with her. His fate is unknown, although knowing Circus Baby, it's probably not good, given that nobody else appears to know what happened in Silver Reef. It's entirely plausible that everyone just thinks Charlie is missing, and John is probably about to follow up on that as well, although John most definitely is not going to be getting found. So that is the final book in the Silver Eyes trilogy, and in the next video I'm going to briefly go through Ultimate Custom Night's brief contribution to the lore, and then following that I'm going to begin to piece all of the franchise up until this point into one cohesive timeline in order to make sure everything actually fits together as it should.